Welcome back to episode 27 of Steeler Thoughts and Chief Feelings. I am your co-host, Chris. I'm the philosophy professor and the Steelers fan in the group.
And I am your other co-host, Ajay. I'm the psychiatrist and Chiefs fan in the group. Thanks to all of you that have been following along, either here on YouTube with the video podcast or the film reviews, or if you're downloading the podcast, wherever it is that you download podcasts, or if you're with us on social media at STCF715. We're on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Same handle on all three. And our comment of the week, it's actually fairly similar to our last one last week. It's not that different. I had posted a picture of against the Raiders. Mahomes had a play where he had run up to the line of scrimmage to cause a defender to commit and then flipped it over his head to Samaje Perine. And the comment was from Mile High, which might give you some idea of biases. And they said, every QB does this. And I resisted the urge to reply, not Bo Nix. Not Bo Nix. But
Does every QB do this? I think of it as a fairly characteristic Mahomes move.
I'll tell you, no Chiefs QB did this before Mahomes. And we had a lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah, you have had a lot of them before this. I don't think maybe Ben Roethlisberger did something like that at some point, but not with the regularity that Mahomes does. I'll put it that way. Right? Mahomes has mastered that art, I think.
I think Ben, I picture him more like doing the run around and throw it to someone as he's being nailed and somehow get the throw off anyway. Like he's basically like holding a defender off with one arm and throwing a ball that's completed.
Yeah, there's less finesse to that, right? It's just like, you know what, I'm big enough, large enough that I'll try to make the throw while I'm getting smashed by a defender. Yeah. Well, no, those are pretty cool plays. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, you had another one last night. It was a touchdown to P. Ryan, yeah.
Yeah. The one where he tweaked his... we could just get right into the game at this point. The one where he tweaked his ankle. Is that what they said the injury was at that point? Okay. But initially it looked very bad, right? They were like two people helping him off the field, and then he was right back on the field on the next drive. So
it's funny because he it happened. I was like, oh no, he's getting helped off the field. Then they said it was non-contact, and I was like, oh crap. And I was sitting with my wife watching, and when they showed the replay and he did that like awkward step, I was like, oh, he's going to be back real soon. I'm pretty sure he's going to be back in this game. Like, it looks like he just turned his ankle, and he seems to be like Gumby with his ligaments. So like he just somehow is right back at it. So.
I feel like I do that on a weekly basis. I like step wrong and like half turn my ankle, and then, I don't know. I feel like that's a common thing to happen in my uncoordinated adulthood. Actually, I've just been uncoordinated my whole life, so I think that's an excuse. But initially it did look scary, but then I think after sort of nothing really worrying going forward, right? Just a turned ankle that doesn't even really affect him next week, I assume.
Yeah, he actually turned it against the Raiders. So it was another one of those where he was getting tackled while throwing it, and they kind of turned his ankle out as he was getting tackled. And he actually didn't seem hindered by it in the Raiders game whatsoever. But then he just kind of popped up in discussions of the injury report during the week with like an ankle. And then I actually hadn't put two and two together that it was the play against I remembered the play against the Raiders and that he got grabbed on the ankle, but I also remember him like walking away from that fine. And then the broadcast put it together to yesterday, and I was like, oh, okay. That was even more reassuring. Honestly, like once he was like halfway across the field and he started walking by himself, I was like, okay, we're okay.
Are you still there?
Yep.
Okay. My audio just cut out and then came back in. I have no idea what that was about. But I heard you say something, and then I heard you say nothing. So hopefully, I'm sure it was very insightful.
Now you'll have to listen back to see what I said.
Yeah, this is. I'll be learning as much on this podcast as everyone else. So upshot is he's going to be fine, right?
Yeah, he might be like mildly hindered, but I think this is going to be like how he was in the Super Bowl 2 years ago when he had a high ankle sprain. Like he tweaked it once, but he scrambled when he had to scramble and looked okay doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So well, maybe we should just segue from there into the rest of the game. So that was the pass where they took the lead late, right? Is that right?
I think they tied it on that. They
that was
tied
tying.
it 17 all, yeah.
Okay, because it was, I forgot. It was 17-10 Bucks in the third quarter, and then it was that play, and okay, that was the tie. I got you. Okay. What were your general reactions to the game? Obviously, maybe it was a bit more uncomfortable in the third than you would have liked, but it's Baker Mayfield. It's not going to be that worrisome, right?
Yeah, I think overall, I thought the offense looked very good. We were a couple mistakes early on from really putting the game away at the beginning. The defense had probably its worst game of the year. I thought I'll be interested to get like more into the film review. I've started looking at some of the film, and I think the Bucks did a really good job of taking advantage. I mean, they really went after our safeties not being able to cover tight ends, and they got K. Dotton open several times. And they picked up our blitzes really well. Like, that's been the best offensive line performance against us by far. So, but all in all, I thought that the Bucks offense played well. Our defense wasn't quite up to snuff. Like, little things like the first tackler usually slows or brings the ball carrier down in our defense, and that was not happening at all. So many broken tackles that led to longer gains than they should have. There was a phantom holding penalty on Trent McDuffie where the receiver, I think it was Sterling Shepard, I can't remember, who basically he grabbed McDuffie and tossed him, and McDuffie got called for the hold, which was unfortunate. That extended a drive and negated a sack on a third down early. But all in all, I think defense was a little bit down. Offense, I thought, looked good with some miscues. But I think my overall hot take from this game is that the DeAndre Hopkins acquisition is reminding me of the 2007 Patriots getting Randy Moss. And I'm not trying to compare how good of seasons they will have, but it's one of those situations where we had a player who we thought was kind of over the hill, wasn't playing as well, and then when they get into a situation that they are utilized properly in and they're happy in, suddenly they go right back to who we thought they were before the down tick. So I think we should be anticipating DeAndre Hopkins to look like DeAndre Hopkins did a couple years ago. He's not going to maybe be prime DeAndre Hopkins, but this is a true number one receiver that's dangerous.
Yeah, and to add that to this Chiefs offense is, the rest of the league is, I'm sure, unhappy with the Titans right now. It's like, are you kidding me? But yeah, I mean, he was so useful last night, obviously, in that game. I mean, that first play, or the big pass to him where Mahomes kind of just lobbed it up, which I'm not used to seeing Mahomes doing, right? It's usually he wants to know that it's going, he's got a good chance of completion, but I guess he knows that even if it's DeAndre Hopkins, because in triple coverage, because it's DeAndre Hopkins. But I think that was triple coverage, and it didn't even look to me like he elevated much above it. He just sort of tracked it better than everyone else and came down with it.
That was amazing. And you're right, Mahomes doesn't throw balls like that. He actually is one of the he's one of the quarterbacks that throws fewest times into tight windows over the course of his career. He usually throws to open guys, but he also hasn't had a receiver like this. The closest person to this was Tyreek Hill, who is extremely underrated in his ability to make contested catches down the field, but he's also 5'9". And DeAndre Hopkins is a big guy, a strong guy, and I mean, he's just never had anybody like this that he could just throw the ball up to and trust that he'd go get it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if this changes Mahomes' game or what over the course of the rest of the season here. If he just starts trusting Hopkins more to come down with it. sounds like, or it looks like he's already doing that. But,
yeah, and you'd think that throw would go a long way to building trust. Like that was, I thought it was picked live. I was like, did he catch that? Like he actually caught that? Mina Kimes from ESPN brought up a good point too, that the throw also represented like an incredible amount of faith that Mahomes has in his arm, because he was like stepping right into pressure and just like heaving that ball. Like that's, you really have to think you have like the confidence that it must take to make that play, and the confidence you must have when you have an arm like he does to just like, well, I'm doing this. Like that was crazy.
But he does have the arm. Like he should have that confidence. He's like always been able to put it sort of just wherever he wanted to, even without being able to step into it. So it's not surprising. Yeah. And then so he caught 2 touchdowns. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I remember, thinking, actually, I don't know if I remember the plays in detail right now. I remember thinking, at least on the first one, that he was very much on the same page with Mahomes and the way it played out, which I thought was another promising. Sign.
There were a couple plays that were, so the first one I thought was really good play design too. They basically had Kelsey come sit at the goal line and Hopkins go back to the post. And so then they had the safety kind of have to decide, and the safety came up to Kelsey and Mahomes threw it over his head. The second one was basically just like a slant. He just like, there was nothing special about it. Like he just ran a slant, and with the motion, Mahomes felt like he could just fire it in there, and he did. Like it was one of those where like you just put a bunch of heat on it before the safety can come down on it, and he caught it for a touchdown. I mean, it's just like easy, too easy. Yeah. The other play that I thought was really interesting on watching afterward, Ryan Clark brought it up on the post game, but in overtime, Mahomes threw an out route to DeAndre Hopkins, which ended up going for about a 15-yard gain. He broke a tackle and took it down the sideline. And on rewatch, that was a run play. And Mahomes and Hopkins both noted a defender was playing off, and so they checked to an out route. The entire rest of the team is playing it as a run play. And Mahomes just got it out to Hopkins. So they really are on the same page at a level that is very interesting for guys that have been working together for a week and a half.
Yeah, that's incredible. That reminds me, that's like a kind of Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown kind of connection that I remember a couple times there. They were like the only people on the field that knew what they were doing and could make it work. But to be on the same page, that on the same word, the same paragraph already is really impressive. And a bad sign for, I think, opposing defenses. But yeah, so I mean, speaking of overtime, I guess I wanted to get your opinion. This is more on the Bucs and the Chiefs, but do you think that they should have gone for 2 after scoring that touchdown at the end?
I think so.
I mean, obviously there's hindsight bias now, but like even at the moment, what would you have thought?
I mean, at the moment, I really wanted them to kick the extra point. So, like, and by that logic, I think they probably should have gone for 2. Like, I was really hoping that they would kick the extra point.
This is always my criteria for deciding what the right move is. Like, if I were the other team, what would I not want us to do here, right? And I think that's exactly what I was thinking about that play. Yeah,
and
the decision.
So the one, I think, somewhat salient argument I heard about kicking the extra point was that they didn't. The idea would be like, you don't want to motivate Mahomes to try to come down and win the game before overtime with the 27 seconds and 3 timeouts. But like, I think he wanted to do that anyway. Like, the Chiefs are very aggressive. It's not like they were going to kneel that out, and they didn't. They tried, and they kind of had a little bit of a hairy drive. That was one time when Mahomes and Hopkins weren't on the same page, and Mahomes almost threw a pick. But
yeah, Peyton Manning was talking about that in the broadcast. He's like, I know what they're going to do. They're going to try to score here, but they really should just play for overtime. And then he was 2 near picks at the end of that drive. It's like, I told you what they should have done.
That's funny. But yeah, the Chiefs are going to, with 27 seconds and 3 timeouts, they're going for it 10 times out of 10. So I don't think the extra point versus going for 2 would influence that whatsoever. If the point is like they didn't want to kind of utilize their aggressiveness or utilize the aggressive play in a situation that doesn't matter. Like, it's one of those where it's like, maybe we save a play, a good 2-point play, a good short yardage play for overtime, in the sense that I feel like if Mahomes goes down and scores, we lose anyway. So why kind of blow this play in a situation where we might be losing anyway? And instead, if we end up going to overtime, then I have a play in my pocket. I don't know. Maybe I think you're kind of getting a little too in the weeds with that kind of thought process. I don't think it was like colossally stupid. I don't think these choices are as black and white as we try to make them seem, but I definitely would have gone for it in that situation because I believe in the inevitability that if you give Mahomes the ball in overtime, he's going to go down and score, but I don't think you have to believe in that to think that. I think it's just the logic of like, we're on the road. This is a team that's 7-0. We're 4-4. We don't have our 2 best receivers. Like, we've done well to get this. Like, let's just end it. Why extend this game longer and give the better team a chance to win it?
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. And you could even see in overtime, once the Chiefs won the coin toss, Baker Mayfield was like, "Oh shoot," like if he thought like we don't want to give the ball to Mahomes first in overtime because he's going to just take it down and win it. And so if he was thinking that, like, okay, don't give him the opportunity, go win the game in regulation.
And one of the discussion points my wife and I were having during the overtime drive was like, how come like whenever the Chiefs get the ball in overtime, it's just like every play starts working. It's like, well, where were these plays? Like Andy's really sitting on some stuff sometimes where it's just like, all right, now let's like really get in the bag. And like suddenly it just like seems effortless moving the ball down the field.
Overtime is like playoffs for the Chiefs. It's like, okay, we got to actually win now. So let's do it. Right. Yeah. I don't know.
How does he have that many plays? Like, for example, even overtime against the 49ers in the Super Bowl was like that. It's like, you would imagine you're like really emptying out the bag in the Super Bowl, and then it's just like in the overtime, he's got a bunch of plays that are going to work.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just like, what do they say? What's the saying? Like, something of genius or whatever, right? I don't know. When it comes down to crunch time, when you really got to like think up a play or think up something to do, like, that's when they're at their best. And maybe that's what's going on there. But, maybe, I mean, how much of it depends? Like, would you say that actually, I wasn't watching very carefully to see whether they were they huddling in overtime, or was it like Mahomes calling plays? Was it no huddle? Because at least in the Steelers. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
They were huddling.
Okay. Yeah, so those were just plays that they had in their bag, I guess. I mean, like on the Steelers, it always kind of made sense that there would be a difference in how we played in crunch time versus not, because usually in crunch time we would go no huddle and then would call plays at the line, and he was very good at that. In a way that like was never surprising that we were better, but that doesn't explain the difference for the Chiefs here if they're still huddling.
I mean, definitely there does. The more I watch Patrick Mahomes, the more I feel like, especially in the regular season, he reminds me of, I don't know how much like Chris Paul you watched in the NBA, but Chris Paul like always had this, he's a point guard and he's always like very in tune to the flow of the game. And he always seemed to be operating at like 70 to 80%, really facilitating a lot early in the game, like getting everybody involved, thinking about who needed shots and who needed to get more engaged. And then the fourth quarter, he would like really turn it up. And suddenly it's like, oh, Chris Paul's going to like make this aggressive play and try to score here and keep it, And I feel like Mahomes gives me that impression too, where like he's not sliding in big situations. He's cutting it back and he's taking on a defender, or he's fitting balls into tighter windows. Like he just seems to take another level of like aggressiveness, and he's very in tune with the moment. Like, this is when I have to make a play. And you see it. I mean, that's another thing we should discuss. Like, the Chiefs' third down offense is like approaching ridiculousness this year now. Like, I saw Bill Barnwell with some stat. It was like, I should have saved it for this, but I think like our passing EPA is like 22nd on first down, 19th on second down, and first on third down. And like number 2 is closer to like number 11 or 13 than they are to us at number 1. Like, I mean, there is definitely an element to this team where Mahomes is just like, okay, now it's like money down, or now it's time, like, let's go.
Yeah. Would you say that the difference between like Mahomes earlier in his career, say in like 2018 and Mahomes now is that in 2018 he was like 100% on every play and now it's more like 100% in the fourth quarter or overtime, but 70-80% for for the rest.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
but I think he got there pretty fast. Like, I think his first season for sure, he was just, and one way that kind of manifested was he almost seemed overhyped in the first quarter of like really big games. Like, if we go back to some of his big games in 2018, like the Rams game, that Monday night game, we actually, like, I think we fell down 10-0 in that game. And I mean, that's not an uncommon thing for us. Actually, it wasn't 10-0 because apparently every time Mahomes has been down 10-0, he's won the game and we lost that one. So it couldn't have been 10-0. But, it's one of those where and I remember the Patriots game that year, we had a couple big primetime games where it seemed like he was like overjuiced and had to like dial it back and get settled into the game. And I think now he just kind of rides the wave. The first time I really remember it was this first Super Bowl against the 49ers, his second year starting, when like suddenly it was the fourth quarter and he was like a different animal. I mean, he didn't play that great of a game. And then the last 7 minutes, he was just on fire.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think this is, I mean, I guess that segues kind of nicely into the next follow-up question I had on that, which is, do you think this is a strategic thing or do you think this is just like his personality? Like, okay, time to buckle down. Because you could see it being, well, I don't know if there's any evidence one way or the other, but you could see it being strategic if like he tends to get overhyped at the beginning of games and make mistakes because of that and knows this, then maybe he like goes in sort of intentionally low energy and so that he saves the hype for when he needs it. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's strategic. I think it's like, but I think it's strategic in that he's learned this from Andy Reid. Because Andy Reid is very much like, just do what you have to do to win. And he's never going to do more. Like, I think it's a little confounding. People like to bring up stats like point differential when it comes to the Chiefs versus like the Lions or the Ravens or the Bills. But the Chiefs are not trying to blow people out. Like, they're just not. And I agree that like when you're a really good team, there should be some blowouts and that winning every game by one score is unsustainable. But I think there are exceptions. Like, Peyton Manning had a great record in one-score games. Tom Brady had a great record in one-score games. Like, there's certain players that it's not just random. And yeah, that's true. He had some great moments. But I think the Chiefs also are not in the business of trying to blow teams out because they're not trying to utilize every advantage they have. They're trying to feel games out, see what works, see what doesn't work for them, and I think once they feel like they've done enough to win, they really shut it down. Like, that's it.
Yeah. I mean, I think we were going to get into like our takes on the opposing, your take on the Steelers and my take on the Chiefs this year. So you've given me, that's more or less what I was thinking about the Chiefs this year. That like they're not trying as hard as they might, as they will later in the playoffs, right? They'll try harder in the playoffs. They're trying just to win right now, and they're not trying to blow people out. Anyway, I wanted to maybe circle back to something about the tackling issues that you had mentioned on the defense earlier. Unless obviously there's more things we can talk about in this game, but I feel like when people talk about tackling issues and missing the first man missing or whatever, sometimes that can be just sort of like poor tackling form, but not always. I feel like in other cases it's either someone was out of position and so had to run faster to get to where they needed to be when they needed to be there and wasn't in control when they got there and therefore missed the tackle, or sometimes it's the other team has schemed things in a way to make sure that people are out of position on the defense. Do you have a sense for where these tackling issues were coming from, and whether they are like correctable in terms of individual tackling form or whether it was more scheme oriented?
I think my initial instinct is that I think the Bucs called a really good game. I think that they had us out of position. They had us guessing a lot more than we're used to. The Chiefs defense usually dictates when the other team has the ball, and And that was just not the case against the Bucs. I mean, they had their moments. Like the Chiefs had some really good defensive drives late third quarter, early in the fourth quarter when there was a moment there where this game could have gotten out of hand. You know, we gave the ball back. They were up 14-10 and driving. And if they had put a touchdown on the board there, that could have been a real big deal. But the defense had a big stop for a field goal. Then when we scored, the defense got to stop again to give us a chance to come down and get a lead. So they had their moments. But overall, I think the Bucs just really... They utilized the flats. They utilized like that kind of intermediate sideline area, and they did a good job getting our defenders like running, chasing. You know, there was a lot of chasing going on rather than anticipating.
Yeah, they really did utilize the flats. I mean, for as much as they did, you would have thought Baker would be a little bit more accurate in a lot of those passes to the flats. But yeah, a lot of his plays I remember going around there and then getting dropped because they were too low or behind or whatever. What else from this game stands out to you? What else do you want to comment on? Obviously, we don't have the Steelers game now, so this week, so we can talk as much as we want about this one.
I think the other point that I wanted to make was that the Chiefs have committed to the run this year in a way unlike they ever have during the Mahomes era. You know, we did have some times under Andy Reid and Alex Smith where we really committed to the run heavily, but like there are so many times where it's like 1st and 10, run, 2nd and 7, run, you know, and then I think part of it is the amount of trust they have in Mahomes right now to just get it done on 3rd down. Like this is very much like an Alex Smith recipe. I remember Mike Lombardi once saying about the Chiefs in like 2016 or 2017, he said like, the Chiefs' goal on offense is to get to like 3rd and 3. Like they're not trying to get the 1st down before then. Like, and that's what it feels like on a lot of these drives. Like they're perfectly happy to run it on 2nd and 7. And I think it's because the big difference between this year's offense and last year's offense is like last year, it really felt like once we got into 3rd down, if it wasn't 3rd and really short, we might be in trouble. And this year, I mean, Mahomes is just going crazy on 3rd down. Like 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7 is not that scary for the Chiefs anymore.
Yeah. So you could run it twice and be in like 3rd and 8. That's fine. You know, that's exactly where we want them. I think you do have the impression, like watching the Chiefs offense, that, you know, 10 yards is not far enough, right? Their 1st down marker should be like 15 yards out or something. It just looks shorter somehow when the Chiefs are on one side. But, yeah. They're good. I mean, do you think that's, again, part of the overall strategy? Like, let's not try to blow teams out. Let's just try to win. And then when, you know, we'll have practice, you know, we'll be dangerous in all phases of the game at the end of the year. And that's what we want. That's like sort of where we want to be.
Yeah. And I think that's part of it. And I think part of it is they're really making teams think twice about dropping everybody into coverage. They're like, we will run the ball. Like, you know, you better bring a safety down or you better bring guys up to the line of scrimmage because if, you know, I think the Bengals often have really gotten away with dropping people against us and us still throwing the ball. And I think this year it's just like we're not doing that. If you drop people or even if you don't, we're going to run the ball just to make you think twice about dropping people into coverage.
Yeah, so a team that can stop the Chiefs is going to need to be able to play like a cover 2 shell, but then still stop the run. Stuff the run, really, at least a couple times, so that you're not into like a 3rd and short situation. Who can do that? I don't know. The Steelers can't do that. They can't stop anybody running.
The Bucs were a good candidate. They did it well in the first half, and then I think the Chiefs really went heavy into like gap scheme stuff. They started running like, because Andy Reid loves those like inside zone, outside zone runs because you can do a lot of RPOs off of them. But suddenly in the second half, we're like pulling guards where it's a lot more of like designed gap scheme, blow a hole open. And I think that's what really opened up the run game.
Yeah. Well, I guess that is what we have been liking to do this year too. So maybe we'll have practice against it. I'm curious how that, I mean, it's it's hard to anticipate how the Steelers-Chiefs game is going to go this far out, but I am starting to look forward to it more than I was before. Like before this year, I thought, well, that's just not fair. We have to play the Chiefs on Christmas. Like that's no one wants that in Steelers Nation. But no, it could be fun. It could be fun. I don't think it will be fun yet, but I'm like open to the possibility that it will actually be a fun game.
Well, if the season has been any judge of it, it'll at least be within 10 points. So it's definitely not going to be a blowout. Unless the Steelers blow the Chiefs out.
I mean, that'll be your one blowout this year or something like that. Right? Good. Let me think if I had anything else about this game to ask you about. I don't think so. Yeah, do you want to, I guess there's two things that we could pivot to at this point. We'll have to take a break in a few minutes too, but the Steelers did a couple of trades today. Actually, any injury news on the Chiefs then, aside from Mahomes being not an issue?
No, I mean, Hardman's injury initially looked pretty bad, but he came back into the game. I think everyone that was hurt in this game, because Karlaftis and Wharton got hurt, and they both came back in the game too, so I don't think it's anything that looks long-term.
That was on the same play, right?
Yeah, they hurt each other, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's never... Sometimes those are like the worst, because you're not expecting to get hit by...
like Rashee Rice. Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess we can pivot to talk about the trades the Steelers made today, or what we were thinking of doing during this Steelers bye week this week is each sort of give our perspective on the other team from this. I don't know if this is going to be more objective or more ignorant, or maybe that's the same thing. But yeah, so I don't know. Do you have a preference for where we go next?
We'll hit the trades first, and then we can... Because I feel like we'll probably talk longer on the other topics.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so the news, I guess, out of Pittsburgh is that we traded, I think, a 5th-round pick for Mike Williams and a 7th-round pick for Preston Smith. That second one was pretty surprising. I mean, Mike Williams had been, in the conversation, at least among Steelers fans for a while, once Brandon Ayuk deal did not go through in the offseason. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I honestly was sort of becoming more comfortable with our wide receiver room in the last couple games here. Maybe that's just a small sample size, and I shouldn't have been that comfortable anyway. But Calvin Austin is starting to look really good. So I wasn't as convinced that we really needed to add a wide receiver as I had been earlier in the year. But I'm not going to complain about adding Mike Williams. I mean, he does seem like he would be the kind of threat that we, with those good old moon balls, if we keep throwing those, then I think that's going to nicely complement his game. A good contested catch wide receiver. I don't know if you have any thoughts about him.
Well, that's kind of my thought exactly. I almost wondered if starting Russell Wilson made it more likely that they trade for Mike Williams, because I think they match really well. He basically has 2 guys now that he can just, if they're one-on-one, just go deep and throw one up there, and they might come down with it. Like Mike Williams, I mean, he was a Charger for a long time, and I did not love playing against him. I will always cherish the one time that Tyrann Mathieu high-pointed a ball over Mike Williams. That's one of my favorite highlights. But, yeah, his first really big game in the NFL was when the Chargers came into Arrowhead and beat us in 2018, which was not a fun game.
Yeah.
So his thing has just been staying healthy. And the only worry I have with the Mike Williams situation beyond health is that I don't know why the Jets gave up on him so quickly. He was a big free agent signing for them. They got Devontae Adams, and suddenly he was expendable to them, which is a little worrisome. But we also know that Aaron Rodgers is pretty idiosyncratic, and maybe Mike Williams just wasn't doing the exact things he wanted him to do, and maybe Russell Wilson is a little more adaptable.
Yeah, we'll see. I do feel like at least it's sort of, given his injury history, you would worry about that. But it's a little bit lower risk given the last 2 games without him. We've still moved the ball pretty well. Given the increased comfort with our wide receivers, you might think that there's good upside here. And if it doesn't work out, then okay, it's, we're still not in a terrible situation unless like Pickens gets hurt and then we're in a terrible situation. But and then Preston Smith, I was surprised by that. We have to go take a break in like a minute here, but yeah, I don't know. That wasn't really a position of need for us, but the more the merrier, and that was really cheap. I think a 7th-round pick, I said, so why not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have very few thoughts on Preston Smith not watching a ton of NFC football. I was surprised he's been as productive as he has been recently, but so he might be useful.
Yeah. I don't have a ton of thoughts either, but I'm sort of excited to see if he improves our pass rush, which certainly could be useful. You want to take a break and come back and talk some more about the other person's team?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. And we're back. Ooh, I think I stole it from you there. Yeah, Steelers got Preston Smith. We were just ending on, and we'll see what comes of that. But not a bad thing probably. So do you want to? Yeah, we'll get into our more quote unquote objective takes on the opposing teams. I'm happy to go first here because I think we've kind of already covered a lot about what my take on the Chiefs is going to be, which is just that they honestly don't look like they're trying to blow people out, right? And that's what you were saying, that they're trying to win games, and honestly, they haven't been pushed. I think this is they've been pushed a little bit and they've responded sufficiently. But no one has really, I think maybe outside of that Bengals game, had them on the ropes. And I think that's, they're a good team and we don't quite know how good, but we suspect very good given that they, when it's crunch time, they always deliver. And so I think that's my take on them from the sort of impartial perspective here, at least somewhat more impartial perspective. That, people are saying they're 8-0 and they keep like sort of scraping by and getting 1-score wins. But if you watch the games, it's not like that. They're good enough that they could be, if they were trying the whole time, I think, just blowing people out. So I don't know. I think that they have to be easily the favorite going to win Super Bowl at this point, and that's pretty awesome to think of the three-peat here. But I don't know, and I guess also I think the rest of the league is just not super worrying this year. I mean, the Lions are, but they're not in the same conference, and I guess you could say the Ravens are, and maybe Buffalo. I mean, there's just not a ton of big threats out there, it doesn't feel like. And so that also adds to it, right? Like that, they A, haven't been pushed much, and B, who's going to push them, I don't know. So I think, they should feel very comfortable with how the season's going.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense to me. It kind of tracks with what I think. And I think regarding the Buffalo and the Ravens, the thing that's hard for me to get all excited about them is this is what they do every year. The Ravens beat the snot out of bad teams, have some weird losses here or there. And Buffalo is the same, Buffalo's been better than I thought they would be. I should give Josh Allen credit. I thought he was going to struggle more this year because of his receiver situation, and he's made the best of it. So, but I don't know that they're a scarier team this year than they were last year. The same for the Ravens. I know they have Derrick Henry, and I just don't know that they are capable of losing to anybody. Their defense is a lot less reliable, I feel especially at the end of games. And Derrick Henry's an older back who's, let's see how it goes. I hope for his sake and for entertainment's sake that he is 100% in January and ready to go and really effective, but we'll see. I don't know that I would just rely on that in November.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there teams that, here's a way of gauging how Like, are there teams that you think I have no idea who would win that game if the Chiefs played them? Like for me, like just given how well the Lions have been playing recently, I think they could be on that list. Um, or I don't know. And I also wonder about the Commanders. I mean, Jaden Daniels being a rookie is a big caveat there, but they look very good too. And I think it'll be interesting. Chiefs or Steelers and Commanders play next week, and that'll be a good barometer for both teams. I don't know. So, are there teams that you would be? Are there teams that hypothetically, if the Chiefs played them, you would be worried about? Essentially.
I mean, not in a sense that like I would be like I don't know if we can beat them. Like I feel confident that if the Chiefs come out and play their A game, they will beat anybody. I think that in the AFC, the Bills, the Bengals, and the Ravens are all teams that like I would not look forward to going into a matchup with. But I don't think that I'm like scared that we wouldn't be able to beat them. And the same thing with the Lions and the NFC teams in general. Like it's kind of like the 49ers. Like they're good, and I was like, okay, we're going to go play a good team, but I also feel confident that if we're going, and that should be another thing I should have brought up about this game, like Mahomes is no longer slumping. Like he is Mahomes again. Like, and I think it's going to take a minute for people to catch up because he has got like 11 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, but just like watch out in the next couple of weeks. I feel the same way as I felt. I mean, I know I predicted him to have like 30 some odd touchdowns by the end of the year when we talked last week, and that he would get over 4,000 yards. But last week I was like, Hopkins is going to be something. Like I feel the same way about Mahomes. Like now that he's done 2 games in a row, it's kind of like, just watch out. Like I think the Mahomes we know and love is about to be back, and Hopkins is going to go crazy. Like I think this will be a lot more of a prolific offense than people are thinking, because we've seen like a year and almost a half of it be a little less than what we're used to.
Yeah, but that does happen. You have a quarterback just turning it on mid-season sometimes. I think Ben had a year like that in maybe 2017 or something, when it was like just okay for the first couple of weeks, and then around mid-season we had a bye week and came back, and he just was lights out at that point. But like Mahomes is, on track for that. I mean, 3 touchdowns in this game, and I don't remember how many in the game before, but it's what you expect.
I would put it this way. I was more scared of the Bills, Ravens, and 49ers last year than I am of anybody this year. No, I think we could lose. We could definitely lose to those teams, but I'm less concerned about it than I was last year, and we managed to get through all 3 of those teams in the playoffs.
Right. So in a game where both teams bring their A game, you feel quite confident the Chiefs will come out on top.
Yeah,
no matter what that other team is.
Yeah.
The only one that maybe I'm just inflating them because of the score differentials in their recent games, but the Lions are impressive to me. I feel like that's one where, like, if both teams brought their A game, I would really enjoy watching that. I think I would want to see what happened, because I don't know that I know what would happen in that one. But yeah, in general, I think we're on the same page that the Chiefs are clearly the favorites and kind of a league of their own at this point, and the rest of the NFL is trying to catch up and honestly falling further behind, it looks like. So that's the impartial observer's take on the Chiefs, I guess. It's the same as the partial observer's take on the Chiefs this year.
So I guess if we transition over to the Steelers, I think if I were to pick a word for the Steelers right now, I would say enigma. Because there are a lot of things that have kind of changed recently that make it a little more confusing to me as far as where this team is headed. Now, I think that overall, like, to me, I think the floor right now is playoff team. I'm not saying enigmatic, like they could be bad. It's just, to me, the question of, like, how good can they be? Like, is this going to be a team that could challenge for, like, to win the division against the Ravens? Or is this a team that will be 10-7? And I think, the change from Fields to Wilson has been extremely positive for the offense, but again, it makes me wonder about, like, the adjustment to the adjustment. Like, the Steelers offense looks different now. when teams start to key on what the Steelers are trying to do now, what's going to happen? And I can't figure out the defense. Like the defense, you've got Watt, who will make just otherworldly superstar level plays. Patrick Queen will look like a superstar. And Landon Roberts flashes a lot, I feel like. The interior line can look amazing or terrible.
Yeah.
Minka has had a weird year in coverage. Like he's done a lot of overcommitting as a single high safety, which leads to huge plays on the other side that he doesn't commit to. Weirdly enough, he's even had slow rotations as a cover 2 safety, which has led to like hole shots, which weird to me for him. So I just feel like the team is a little more up and down than I would have thought a couple weeks ago. And I think too, because I tend to watch a lot of primetime games because, I have a 16-month-old daughter. So like being locked in during the day is a lot harder, but being locked in at 8:30 is a lot easier. And so I see a lot of the Cowboys, and I just can't understand why the Cowboys went to Pittsburgh and won. Because they don't look good.
It shouldn't. Like the score was closer than the game was. They dominated us, really. I don't know what that was about.
I don't know what to make of that game. Like, I think the Steelers game against the Chargers looks good, but I am biased here, but I think that the Chargers are getting a lot of praise that is a little premature. I think the Chargers are an average team who will look good against bad teams. So beyond that, then
what are our good wins at this point?
What are the quality wins? Yeah, because
we've played teams with good records, but you would think like beating Denver in week 2 is probably not that impressive. They kind of turned it on after that, and turning it on is used loosely here. Likewise with Atlanta in week 1, they've looked better since then. But like, how good was our win there when they were still figuring things out? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's it exactly. And then, the Raiders are terrible. I think the Chargers is the best win. And I think that is a good win. And I mean, now's going to be the time, the schedule is about to, the Commanders are an interesting team. I actually think the Steelers are going to beat the Commanders. I don't think the Commanders are that good of it. I think they were a great offense to start. And I think they've quietly come back to earth, but are like kind of squeaking out wins. Like, they had the Hail Mary to beat the Bears, who I just don't think are a good team. Like, I think the Commanders are one of those teams that's like ripe for the bottom falling out, where they, are they 7-2? Like, yeah. I feel like my bold prediction is that the Commanders are not going to win more than 10 games. Like, I think I think they're going to, like, the bottom will fall out a little bit.
That is bold. I don't expect. I still think they're gonna win like 12 or something at least. But I do see your point though, that they have cooled off, right? I just think that they're still good enough to pull out a number of wins.
I think they're exciting, but I think the results will change. I mean, I think their offense will remain very interesting, but I don't think it'll be dominant like it was the first 4 weeks of the year. And I think the rest of the team is such that they need a dominant offense to be a good team.
That's fair.
So to see that, and then all the divisional games, I think, who's the team? Is it the Browns that you play in like twice in 3 weeks?
2 times in 3 weeks, yeah.
That's always... I hate it when that is with a bad team, because it's so hard to beat a team twice in 3 weeks. Like, it would have been better to do that with the Ravens, Like,
yeah.
Because like you feel like one of those is surely going to be a loss. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, it stinks that that's with the Browns.
Yeah. Yeah, really. Maybe we could play one of those games with Fields at QB, and one of them with Wilson.
Oh, that's a good idea. So, I think to me the question is like, can this team get to 12 or 13 wins, or is it going to be like a 10-7 year? And I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I think this is ending up being not as like elucidating as I might have hoped it would be, because we have the same opinions about the other person's teams that they have. But I think you're right that there's a lot of uncertainty, and I think a lot of it is in the erraticness of the defense.
Which, like,
what
why?
the heck is going on
There's
there?
so many good players. Like, why?
Yeah. I mean, you and I talked about this a bit, and I think Steelers fans would, if they cared about what I said, would hate me for this. But I think Minka has been overrated for a couple of years now. Like he's good, but he's not dominant. He's reacting and not dictating, and I think that's someone actually brought up the possibility of like trading him because he's not making impact plays, and like he still has the reputation of being a huge impact player, and so it's the kind of player you would think has better trade value than they have value that they bring to your team. You might as well see what the options are. Of course, we didn't do that today, but yeah, in the future, I think we might. That might be something to consider. But the other big variable here, I think, is with Russell Wilson. I think a lot of it, like he has looked good in these two games, and the offense has definitely been better with him. But how much of what we're imagining the Steelers to be is sort of projecting from the prime of Russell Wilson's career and imagining him to still be that quarterback. It's hard for me to know that we don't know enough about Wilson at this point to know if he can still be, that good. He might just be like pretty good, but can he carry this team in the playoffs? Like I don't know. I would be surprised even now if he could do that. Yeah. So lots of uncertainty, but that's what makes it interesting, right? When you have these like high epistemic leverage situations where it's like I have no idea what kind of team we're going to be and whether we're good or not, and what we're going to do in this game. Like that's part of what makes it interesting, I think. So, lots of reasons to be engaged as a Steelers fan right now. Should we predict the other person's team's record at the end of the season?
Okay. Oh, okay. Man, this is a hard one for me.
I got to look at the Chiefs' schedule here, actually, but it's going to be. Yeah, you got a hard one. I think I got a really easy one. I mean, easy to ballpark it at least. I mean, it's these predictions always. I don't know if they're cheap in some way, but people can get injured, weird things happen. But I feel like they're not going to lose. The Chiefs are not going to lose more than 2 games this year. So 15-2 would be my expectation.
I would take that, assuming the only disappointing thing would be if the Bills win out, including beating us, then the Bills would still be the 1 seed. But that would be okay.
I don't think they will. They won't win out. Bills. Really? I don't think so. But I don't know.
Oh man, God, your schedule's so hard.
I know it's like a gauntlet for the last
brutal schedule. I'm gonna say, I really do think you're beating the Commanders in Washington. I think you're gonna win 1 against the Ravens, and I think. Let's see. 3, 4. I'm going to say 11-6. I think it's 11-6. I think you beat the Commanders. I think you split with the Ravens. I do think somehow you're going to get both against the Browns. Like, that team is just a mess. Like, I don't think. And so that gives you, what did I say? Commanders 1 with the Ravens, 2 with the Browns. That's 4 wins. And then I think you split with the Bengals, and that gets to 5. At the Eagles is tough. I don't know that you'll be able to beat us. Yeah. You could win it. I mean, I think 11-6 is fair. I think that maybe you lose a Browns game and you beat the Eagles instead, something like that. But so that puts you at what, going 5-4 from now? Well, that's not that exciting, but that's a tough schedule.
Yeah, no, that's pretty reasonable. I think that's where I would guess we're going to end up too, somewhere around 11-6. But I could definitely see 10-7 or something like that too. I mean, it's not a fun schedule.
The thing that's so annoying is that like the Colts and Cowboys should have been winnable games. Like you could easily be undefeated. Like
Yeah, I mean, both of them we were actually score-wise at least we were very close at the end, but
yeah,
we
like
shouldn't
neither
we
of
shouldn't have
those.
won that Cowboys game.
Oh, they're so close to doing so. Oh man, that's a weird. It's a weird season because the two teams you lost to are arguably, well, like we said, there haven't been any like huge marquee win. I do think that Chargers win's a good win though. They're not. They're no joke. Um. Oh boy, yeah. This schedule really gets real. This is. I can't believe you have. Just in general, like part of the reason why I'm a little down is like it doesn't matter who the teams are. If you play 4 divisional games in a row, like how the heck do you win all of those? Like, yeah, 4 division games in a row is extremely tough. I don't know. I don't know how you'll get through that one.
I mean, I don't know why the NFL gave us that schedule. That's entertaining, but it really sucks. So, yeah, I don't know. But I can't remember ever having anything like that, honestly. Like, 2 in a row, yeah. 3 in a row, I'm not sure, maybe, but 4 is like that's got to be unheard of, right? Like, has that happened before?
Well, because I don't think it's that common. I know it's been happening, like it happened to us with the Broncos last year, but it's not that common to play a team twice in 3 games, and you have to do that in order to play 4 division games in a row. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. It'll be good entertainment for the rest of the league, I guess. And we'll be stressed out of our minds.
Yeah, I'll enjoy Sundays for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should we predict the Steelers game?
Yeah, that's
the Commanders game.
Yeah. Sounds like you might be more optimistic than me. I'm going to say 27-17 Commanders. I think the wheels come off for Russell Wilson a bit here. Maybe we're behind and he's asked to catch us up and doesn't go too well. I would be happy if it didn't happen, but I kind of see it.
I think it's going to be like 20-17 Steelers, and I think it's one of those where like the pass rush gets to Jaden Daniels. He's a little confused by the coverages. Like he just looks uncomfortable in a way that Lamar Jackson often does against the Steelers defense. And he's not able to move the ball. Like he'll have his moments. Like I think he'll have like 1 or 2 spectacular passes, but I think that this will be a really low scoring like dogfight game, and I just don't think the Commanders are equipped or used to doing that, especially with a team like Pittsburgh.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would be very happy if that were true. I guess a big, well, anyway, we'll see. But curious how our defense is going to look coming out of the bye week to see if they fix things or not. What about the Chiefs play? Is it the Broncos next week?
Yeah, at Denver. Or no, in Kansas City. I keep saying at Denver. I don't know why.
I want to predict that one. I'll let you go first.
I think it's going to be stupid, unfortunately. Like it's going to be one of those games that like doesn't feel great, and like we kind of slog through it, and we have something dumb like 19 points. I think it'll be like 19-10 or something. Like it's one of those that's just going to feel miserable. We keep getting to the red zone and kicking field goals. There'll be 1 touchdown interspersed somewhere in there, and I'll just be annoyed that we haven't put the game away. And maybe 19-10 is even a little. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think it'll be one of those that's like. I feel like it'll be like 13-10 at one point, and then we'll just kick a couple field goals toward the end of the game and extend it enough to win. I'll hate this game, but I hope we win.
But you'll be uncomfortable the whole time. Yeah. I don't. I mean, they just got destroyed by Baltimore. I feel like it's gonna be. It shouldn't be uncomfortable, right? I don't know. Broncos are enigmatic for me this year, but I don't see them. I don't see them giving you trouble. I think maybe 20. This not enough numbers for me. I keep picking the same numbers. Let's say 26-13. That's an odd score, but I think that could happen. 26-13. And they're not really uncomfortable there. How do you get to 26? I guess that's still a fair number of field goals. It's another touchdown.
2 touchdowns and 4 field goals, probably.
Yeah. So I'm predicting one more touchdown than you. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems fair. I don't think it'll be. I mean, it might not be like as wonderful as comfortable of a game as you could hope for, but I think you'll be fine.
What's weird too is, besides last year, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I just have the instinct. I need to go back and actually look. It feels like we play them better in Denver than in Arrowhead recently, for whatever reason. I mean, we haven't lost to them in Arrowhead since like 2015, and we lost them in Denver last year. But I don't know, the game.
I know, it was Russell Wilson.
Yeah, there you go. The only blowout I can remember. I'm trying to remember what year it was. Maybe it was 2020. We went to Denver and blew them out. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't. It's never comfortable. Vance Joseph, although when he was defensive coordinator of the Cardinals a couple years ago, we picked him apart and Mahomes threw 5 touchdowns. But Vance Joseph always gives us a little trouble, and I think that'll happen again. Like, I think we'll move the ball fine, and the offense will look fine, but we just won't score touchdowns.
Yeah, the stall in the red zone. Okay, so I said 26-13. You said 19-10.
19-10.
Okay. All right. But by way of wrapping up, do we want to go around the league at all from this past week? There were a few interesting results.
Yeah, maybe we can start with Houston at the Jets, the Thursday night game.
Yeah.
This is a weird game because, like, both teams look terrible to start, and then the Jets, like, got enough together toward, like, I really feel like the game changed on Garrett Wilson had this, like, crazy one-handed touchdown, which was very reminiscent of the Pickens non-touchdown. It honestly was like the same thing initially, but Garrett Wilson just barely got his shin in bounds as well. So he ended up getting the touchdown.
It's weird when you have like groups of plays like this that are like unusual, but they happen like back to back or in quick succession, because it gets people thinking about new aspects of what a catch is, right? And I think this is going to be one that they think about for a little while because they happened in close proximity.
Yeah, the Bucs actually had one against the Chiefs along the sideline where the guy got his foot in and then his knee hit out. But right before, it was his left foot going to his left knee. But right before that left knee hit, he had the wherewithal to tap his right toe behind him as he was falling. So when I saw it the first couple times, I was like, that's not a catch. And then I noticed his right toe just tapping, and I was like, dang it.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of those recently that are, well, we'll see what if they have any rule changes about that or not. I don't really have an opinion about whether there should be a difference between those 2 plays or 3 plays or not. But yeah, I mean, I guess the Jets kept their season a little bit alive at this point.
On life support.
Yeah. And CJ Stroud not looking too good right now. I mean, those are like Anthony Richardson numbers, right? Like 10 for 31 or something, I think he was in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like our discussion, we had a discussion before the season about Stroud and Love and about whether they'd be able to replicate in the second season. And I think that discussion is aging fairly well. I think both of us were somewhat worried. I think I was more bullish on Love than Stroud, which may or may not bear out. We'll see, but they both seem to be struggling. I think Love has just been very risk reward. He's just firing balls in there and either throwing picks or throwing touchdowns.
Yeah. Whereas Stroud definitely seems to be struggling more than you would have thought coming out of last year.
Yeah.
Anything else about that one? I don't know.
No, not that much to say. Just that, I mean, I do wonder. You do wonder sometimes with these momentum plays where they're like just picking it up and having some semblance of life in the second half, especially the fourth quarter, might do something for the Jets because, man, it looked bleak. Like, I thought this was going to be like a 10-3 game or something, and the Texans would win. It looked pretty bad.
Yeah. Rodgers was not in sync at the beginning of that game, but I guess got something worked out by the end of it with his receivers. If we go look around, the AFC North was on the whole not that fun for me this week. You would hope like a Steelers bye week, maybe some good things will happen and the other teams will lose. The Browns obliged, I guess. Winston sort of came crashing back to earth, and I guess every AFC North team that was playing this week was playing against the AFC West. So
it was a difficult weekend for me as far as like who to root for. I mean, the Browns Chargers one was clear for me that I would root for the Browns, but the Bengals are playing the Raiders and the Broncos playing the Ravens, and I'm a lot more scared of the Bengals and the Ravens. So weirdly, like, I kind of was rooting for my rivals a little bit just because I was like, I'd rather the division team that I'm not that scared of win and give another loss to these teams that I think could actually potentially get in the way of the Chiefs making the Super Bowl.
Yeah, unfortunately, they both put up 41 points and looked like the kind of scary versions of themselves that we kind of all imagined they would be coming into the year. The Ravens have, I think, more or less lived up to that, but the Bengals haven't. But this week they did.
Weirdly, I don't have as many thoughts about the Bengals game, but the Ravens game, kind of following along, it was kind of the opposite of a normal Ravens game. I feel like the normal Ravens game, they like blow teams out early and then let them back in. Yeah. But the Ravens and Broncos played a pretty tight first half, and then the Ravens blew it open at the end. And the Broncos had a couple missed opportunities. They had a 4th and 2 where the Ravens had a cover 0 blitz, and they had Troy Franklin, I believe is the receiver's name, the rookie. He was going up the seam toward the corner, and Bo Nix had him. He just missed him. And that would have been a big play there. Mm-hmm. So, and the Broncos still almost got it to half at 17-10 before the Ravens scored a quick one. So that game was actually kind of back and forth early on, and then the Ravens pulled away.
Yeah, early on I thought there was some promise there that maybe Denver could keep it close and pull it out, but not in a second.
I will. Moving on, I just have to mention the Jacksonville-Philadelphia. I have never seen anything like Saquon Barkley's reverse hurdle thing. I had not been following that game much at all, and I actually first saw the highlight during halftime of the Sunday night game. And I was sitting on the couch with my wife, and I audibly was like, "Oh my God!" Did that just happen? Because they showed a really quick clip, not the full play, and I was like, "Did he do what I thought he did? Was he backwards hurdling over someone? That's just insane."
I wish I had seen that live. That's one of the ones where it would be more impressive to not know it was coming. When you're seeing highlights, it's going to be some form of impressive. Still, that was ridiculously impressive. But if I had seen that live, I felt like it would have been just ooh, holy cow! What is going on? A reverse hurdle is, I don't know. That's very cool.
That's another just the confidence that people have in their abilities, to do that, to try that, unbelievable. I'm pretty sure he's going to try to go low, and the athleticism.
And I'm facing the wrong way, but I might as well jump. Yeah,
it's bananas.
I wonder if it's something he's practiced this one. I don't know.
I will say the Miami Buffalo game is the kind of game that I feel like the Chiefs would get a lot of flack for playing, but Buffalo, I have not heard a lot of flack for them like needing a 61-yard field goal as time expires to beat Miami. But just saying, a lot of teams have these kinds of games. It's not just us.
It just gets more attention when you're the two-time defending champ. So that's what it is. But yeah, and I guess Detroit Green Bay was interesting just because those two teams look like they should be good. But Detroit really just manhandled them, I thought.
Yeah, I should comment on this because I've been the like downer on Jared Goff. And again, because I'm stubborn, this game doesn't like negate my priors to me. Like he threw for 145 yards and a touchdown. But I will say that Goff throughout his career has not been good in the elements, and this, honestly, to me, was a more impressive Lions win than like them blowing some hapless team out like 50-9. You know, like this is a tough environment. They played out on the road in the rain, in like not a fun place to play, and they clearly didn't have their best stuff, and they gutted out a win. Like I think this to me is more prognostic of the Lions' ability than beating up on some hapless team. I thought this was a really good win for them.
Yeah. And Goff continues to complete ridiculously high percentages of his passes. I think 18 for 22 this week. But even though it was only 145 yards, just it's pretty efficient play. And I think you can win with that when the rest of your team is as good as theirs is. So.
Yeah, I do wonder, they're now missing Jameson Williams, and the defense will be the real thing. The defense played very well. They've been opportunistic, although Jordan Love gives opportunities. But if their defense can play like this will be interesting. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
I should also shout out former Chief DeMarcus Robinson for his walk-off touchdown in the Rams Seattle game, the one-handed catch. The Rams are suddenly back after being hurt. They, I think, will. This looks like a team that could be a playoff team all of a sudden. After, how many games have they won in a row now? They were looking a little dicey. Let's see, they've won 3 in a row now. So they were 1-4. Yeah, they were 1-4 and have turned their season around. This Stafford is an interesting team.
He's good. He's good. Even at this stage of his career, he's he can grit out the wins, and I think he's. I've underrated him for a while because he was on the Lions when they were bad for a while, but he's a good quarterback.
Well, he's somebody that I think is because I think you and I both kind of fall in the camp of obviously wins and losses aren't everything for a quarterback, but over a large sample, you have to produce some results. And I think I had gotten to the point with Stafford where I was where are the results? He's had a 10-6 year here and there, but what has he done? And so I think he is the stats nerd's dream, the guy who you're no, if you take this guy who puts up stats and put him in the right position, he can win. And Stafford was that kind of guy. He could.
Yeah. Yeah. Even when he was in Detroit, you could see he could make all the throws, right? He has an awesome arm. It still does, not as good as I don't think it used to be, but he was. I remember coming in there when we were good, but in Ben's, late prime years, I would say, and I would still fear playing Stafford because he was. Well, I don't know about fear. But I was stressed about it. He's not a walk in the park.
Yeah, and he did. He gave us a tough game. In the year we won the Super Bowl, we barely beat the Lions. And we needed a lot to make that happen. We had a game-winning touchdown drive toward the end, and we had a fumble recovery at our own 1-yard line and returned it all the way for a touchdown. So it was a tough game. I remember that was week 4, I think. But I did, so he would be the guy that Herbert defenders would be pointing to the most, right? Mm-hmm. Look, you got a guy with all the tools. You put him in the right place, and he can do it. And we'll see. There are many different, lots of guys have lots of tools, but I don't know. I still am on the fence. I still am a believer that, like, if you go 10 years and you're not winning playoff games, like, at some point, usually there's some reflection on you. But in Stafford's case, one would say, unless he, like, matured a lot under McVay, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know. It's a totally different environment if, that makes him approach things somewhat differently, too. I don't know. But, yeah, Goff, back to Goff. I mean, he's that kind of quarterback where, yeah, we all thought he was a system quarterback for a while, and it still feels like he is, but he's making me wonder.
I will remain stubbornly steadfast.
Well, I'll give it time. I don't need it. Yeah, we'll see.
And I will remain stubbornly steadfast on Sam Darnold as well, who played actually pretty well down the stretch, but like this was just an ugly game against the Colts. Like it was so bad that I was like, I always watch the Sunday night game and the Monday night game unless I have something else to do, and I watch it until 11:30 and then go to bed. And it was about 10 o'clock, and I was like, I'm going to go to sleep and watch the rest of this tomorrow. Like, I'm going to get to sleep.
Yeah. But at some point, sleep becomes more attractive than does a really boring Sunday night football game.
And the second half was better, at least from Darnold's perspective. And I hope this should at least quiet some of the whole, like, Flacco buzz. Like, it's like, Joe Flacco's Joe Flacco. Like, we know... he can get on fire for about 4 or 5 weeks in a row. But if this man was a 17-game starter who would lead you deep into the playoffs, like he would have done better in New York or in Denver. Like, he's a backup now. He's a very good one, but he's a backup.
And he's good when you don't expect him to be who you're playing, right? I mean, that's the kind of backup you want, right? But yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious about the Colts. Are they still starting him, or are they going to go back to Richardson? I feel like at this point they should probably commit to somebody.
I think they're committing to Flacco. At least what Shane Steichen said before the game was like, this isn't like a temporary measure. Like, he's our starter now. Okay. He was kind of like, long term we haven't given up on Anthony Richardson, but indefinitely Flacco's the starter.
Well,
although you think if he has another game like that might change. Yeah.
Yeah, indefinitely until it's 2 bad games in a row.
Yeah. Wait, who are you going to root for in Bengals-Ravens?
I think I got to root for the Bengals, just because in terms of standings, I would feel more comfortable if the Ravens had another loss. But I don't know. There's like the standings consideration, and then there's like the evidential consideration that if the Bengals are really back as a win versus the Ravens would indicate, then I'm not comfortable with that. So I don't know. What's the strategy here?
I think I agree with you that I'll root for the Bengals, mainly because I think their wins have been against fraudulent teams. Like, they've beaten the Panthers, the Giants, the Browns, and the Raiders. And they've lost to the Patriots, Chiefs, Commanders, Ravens, and the Eagles. So, like, they haven't beaten a good team yet. So, and, I mean, they played as well as we did. I think that's if anyone really wants to point to a Chiefs win this year that's like, I don't know, it should be the Bengals game.
Yeah. They
played us real tight, but they tend to do that.
And their losses are all, aside from the Patriots, to good teams. So I guess I don't know. I guess there's still plenty to worry about with them being a threat down the stretch here.
Yeah. And it's not like they have like a gauntlet. Depending on their difficult games going forward are this Ravens game, they go at the Chargers, and then they have 2 against the Steelers. I feel like every other game is easy for them. So. They could kind of open things up. They're 4 and 5?
Yeah.
Yeah. So with like 4 more hard games, even if they lose all of them, that gets them to 8 and 9. So then if they win 1 or 2 of those, suddenly, I would hate that too, because like if the Chiefs do get the 1 seed and the Bengals are like a 7 seed, I would be like, crap. Like,
Yeah.
That'll be a nice reward.
Well, that's the last team you want to play. Is yeah, that's true. Good. Well, we've got it's election night in the U.S. here. Um, we were, yeah, we were both talking about our strategies here, and you were comparing it to a football game. Like if you're trying to like not stress about the Chiefs game, you know like you're going to fail, right? You're going to be checking the score, watching the game. I'm trying to debate whether I should be checking the election results or not tonight, and I feel like there's like an event horizon point. If I check them like 2 or 3 times, I'm just going to fall in a hole, and I'm going to be checking them constantly. So I have to. It's like I don't know. I don't think I have the self discipline to not do it, but I'm going to try not to check them. We'll see what happens tonight. But
yeah, I'm the opposite. I have completely given into the impulse. Like I know that I will be checking it, so I'm just going to have the TV on the news. I'm going to have the New York Times election probability needle on one laptop. I'm going to be checking Twitter, and then on other laptop, I'll probably be just like doing something for fun. But I think that'll be, well, I'm also going to try to record the Chiefs film review tonight. So we'll see how that happens during all the election stuff. Yeah. And some of you may have noticed that I, along with the Steelers, took a bye week and have not yet put out the Steelers-Giants film review, but it's in the can. It'll happen at some point. Probably not tomorrow. Probably Thursday, if we're being realistic. Thursday night, I might do Thursday or Friday night. So right before the Steelers' next game, there will be a Steelers-Giants film review at some point.
Well, I'm sure it'll be as elucidating as ever. I feel like I learn more from your film reviews than I do from actually watching the Steelers games. Well, that's true by a long shot, actually, but I learn on Twitter also. Anyway.
Well, this will be like a reminder film review because we'll have all forgotten about what happened in the game that was almost 2 weeks ago, and then we can remember.
It'll be fun again. It was like, oh yeah, we looked good in that game. Okay. Well, hopefully we have more fun games to talk about next week, and hopefully something happens in the election. Stop thinking about it already. I'm already thinking about it too much. Close to that point where I'm just going to be following all night. But, all right. Anything else for this week?
Do you have an anecdote that you wanted?
Good question. If you go first, I might be able to think of one.
All right. I will tell an anecdote then for those of you that may recall, we've talked a lot about we went to a private school called Columbia Independent School. And I don't know how much we've pointed this out, but it was a very small private school. We were there from 6th through 10th grade. And like small to the extent that I think when we started in 6th grade, I think our entire 6th grade class was 20 people. And by the time we got to 10th grade, I think our entire 10th grade class was 10 people. And then we went to a public high school for 11th grade that I think our class was in the upper 600s. So
yeah, it was a change.
Yeah, it was quite a culture shock. And we basically, like, we kind of knew a few other people, each of us, but like not really. Like I had that summer, I had met a couple people from Rockbridge at a summer camp, but we didn't know that many people at all. So, and at this stage of my life, I did not have a cell phone. And so we were in this like really crowded school, and I don't even remember I think it was on our first day. Our first day, we had like got through the first couple periods of the day, and we had a lunch break. And I don't know how, but we lost each other. Like, and this is just like a massive school, and we're from this like tiny, so like there's just zero, and I don't have a phone. So there's just zero hope. Like we can't. And so I think like both of us ended up, like I just ended up going to the cafeteria and getting something. And I think you went with another like mutual acquaintance that we knew and went to Taco Bell for lunch. And like we just ended up meeting at our next class like an hour and a half later. Like it's so funny to think of now where it just like seems impossible. But yeah, we went to school after a couple classes. We just completely lost each other and had no idea how to find each other.
Did you get a cell phone? Like when did you have one in when did you get one? You must have had one because I remember. I feel like I remember calling you on my. Well, I guess I got to call your home phone on my cell phone.
No, I did intermittently have one in like junior high and high school, but it was not like in my family, like we kept the cell phones at home. So like it was there if I needed to make a call or something, but I never had it like on my person all the time until I went to college. I got a cell phone.
Oh yeah. I had like the stupidest Samsung flip phone I remember, but you remember that like T9 predictive text you used to use? Oh yeah. I wonder if I could still use that. Like, if it would have come back I'm sure it would come back to me.
Yeah, I bet. Like, because I kept using that, and I didn't get a smartphone until I was a junior in college, maybe.
Oh, yeah, I think that's about when I did too.
Because I think the iPhone came out when we were in high school for sure. It might have actually been, I think it was 2007 when the iPhone came out. So we were like juniors into seniors in high school when it came out. Because I remember there was a guy in our school that had an iPhone when we were seniors. I remember being like, whoa.
Were we really impressed? I don't remember that.
Yeah. I was definitely like, we were still, it was that time. Like, we were just like, who needs an iPhone? Like, I have an MP3 player. I have a cell phone. Like,
yeah, like an iPod. Yeah.
Like, I was like, I don't need, and then when I went to college, I got an iPod Touch because I bought a Mac for college.
Yeah.
And so I had an iPod Touch and I had a cell phone. I was like, I don't need an iPhone. Now like every person has a smartphone. I remember the iPod Touch because that was the summer of 2008. And I remember being shocked that there was a device that I could hold in my hand that got the internet for free. Like I could just connect and like just use my Wi-Fi for free. Like that just seemed inconceivable. Like I didn't know this when I bought it, like because I just came free with my MacBook. So I got it and I was like, I can connect. I was like, I'm not being charged for data. Like I'm connecting to my Wi-Fi on this thing that I can hold in my hand. It was crazy. I didn't know what to do with that. I remember.
Yeah, that's bringing back. I had like the earlier like the iPod Video or something, which was like this like 30 gigabyte iPod that had like the track wheel that you could like scroll back and forth. I guess this is my anecdote now. Like I remember that thing, and I remember having I put a shield on it, like so that when I knew I would drop it, and I said, oh, if I drop it, and I remember like putting that shield on and getting it right. I spent like an hour trying to get it on, and then when I finally put it on, it was like overhanging by like a couple of millimeters on one side. And I was so pissed. I didn't know how to fix it. It was like basically when it's on there, it's on there. So. Yeah, that's my anecdote. Putting the protection screen on my iPod Touch, I guess. No, it wasn't Touch. It was the iPod Video. It's like the first version that had it. And it was this tiny screen, and you could watch videos on it. That sounds so strange now, but I was likewise very impressed. Like you could watch videos on a thing that you hold in your hand here, as opposed to like on like a desktop monitor or something. Wow, different world.
Before I had the iPod, so I had one of those MP3 players that like, it was like this big and it only had like 512 megabytes. And it was like, you could see the song and then you would like go forward and back by like twisting the end and it would shuffle automatically. Like there was no way to like select your song. You just had a certain number of songs on there and you just shuffle through them and that was it. And you just plug your headphones in. You pick your song
by scrolling through basically everything on your iPad or on the device until you find what you want.
That was my first MP3 player. And I never like really got into like the Discman before that because I never got one that didn't skip very much. And so it was always annoying when you just walk around with it and it would just skip all the time.
Yeah, I remember I had like a crappy CD player, but that I got, I think, for like my 11th birthday or something. And you had to hold it perfectly still, like flat and still for it not to skip. It did work for that.
Because like I don't know that portable CD players ever got to the place where they were better than portable cassette tape players before the MP3 became a common thing. Like portable cassette tape was great.
Isn't it strange that we were alive in these years? Like these feel like ancient history now that we're describing them. Like these are not concerns that you have to worry about, like your iPhone skipping or something like that, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's what reminds me that, like, because I often think about people that are like 80, and I'm just like, do they think about how wild it is, like how much has changed in their life? And I was like, a lot's changed in our life, and we don't think about how wild it is. Like, yeah, I imagine they're the same way with just more things that have changed. But like, I mean, we're not that old, and it was common until we were in at least high school to junior high to have situations where you would just be like, I'm going to meet you here at this time, and have no way to communicate with that person until you get there. Like, if the person doesn't meet you there, like, you don't know where they are. They have no idea. It's like, we're going to meet at the movies at 6. And it's like, if they're not there at 6, like, it's like, I don't know. Where are they?
You got to even talk about where you're going to meet at the theater, because otherwise you might not find each other, right?
Yeah. This is common. Or you could lose your friend at school. And, like, now that's just inconceivable. Like,
or like, directions to get places too, like just use Google Maps all the time now. Anyway, things definitely change, but I think it is cool to like step back and appreciate how much they've changed even in the last 30-ish years for us.
Did you, well, I know I'm continuing down a tangent, but did you ever see the thing that came online that there was a professor, I might have sent it to you because it was a professor who had posted an email that his students sent him, and they were like, I know you said not to use, like, to try to use current references, but is it okay if I use something from the 20th century? And it was from like 1994 or something. And he was like, it's like old paper from the 20th century.
Actually, this is awesome timing. Just on yesterday, I had a student that was talking about a really, really old book that was like a section from that was relevant to our the thing that we have been talking about in class. And it turns out the book was from like 1996 or something like that. I was like, oh my God. Like I was 7 at that time. It's not that old. That is alarming when that happens.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we can go to trying not to follow the election, but definitely following the election.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll report back next week if we succeeded, or at least I guess you're not going to try. I'm going to try.
No, I'm not trying at all.
All right. Well, hopefully we have some fun stuff to talk about next week.
Yeah, and like I said, I will record that Chiefs film review tonight, and the Steelers film review at some point, probably Friday or something. Until next time.
Yeah, see you then.